Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ryobi P3240 18-volt wet dry vac, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, starting off at the top of the tool, we have the 18-volt battery slot, which will accept any of Ryobi's 18-volt batteries. Overall, the battery slot seems to work just fine. There's a little bit more wiggling than what is typically found on a Ryobi tool, but it still locks into place nice and securely, and I don't think you're going to have any issues. And even if you were to have issues, the vacuum cleaner would have to get tipped over for the battery to come loose, and I don't even think that would knock the battery loose. And your vacuum would stop working basically at that point anyway because of the float mechanism on the inside. So overall, the battery slot gets a pass on this particular tool. And next up we have the crevice tool. Now the crevice tool is located on the body of the tool near the base, and it is in a recessed location where it's easy to access. Overall, however, I'm just not a very big fan of this particular crevice tool. It's too short to be useful in cleaning a car, and it's definitely too wide for being useful for cleaning the gap in between, well, your miter saw's cutting inserts. So quite frankly, I'm just not very, well, happy with the overall design of this particular crevice tool. I'm kind of like, why even bother, since it's it's a jack of all trades, master of none. So quite frankly, I just am not a very big fan of this particular crevice tool, and I think it needs a redesign. Let's move on. And next up we have the floor tool. The floor tool is also located on the body of the tool and is also in a recessed location. It's definitely not going to be your biggest and most powerful floor tool, but it will be good for, well, sucking up that sawdust off of the workbench or cleaning off the carpet on your car from all those loose pebbles or rocks that just fell off your hiking shoes. Overall, I'm perfectly satisfied with the floor tool because, well, it's an 18-volt vacuum cleaner, and making that floor tool any bigger means that it's, well, sort of pointless because you're going to lose a lot of section because, well, it's an 18-volt vacuum cleaner that's cordless. So, quite frankly, I'm perfectly satisfied with the floor tool, even if it isn't as, well, big as some people might be, well, desiring. Just keep in mind that this really is meant for, well, your sawdust and small dirt and, just your small stuff that is easily sucked up. If you're going to try to suck up large splinters or longer objects, it's probably going to get clogged. And next up we have the power switch. The power switch is a fairly simple switch. It's made out of hard plastic with a texturized bump pattern on the top of it, and overall is easy to access on the corner of the tool. It's a rocker style switch, and it's pretty simple. You have on, you have off. And that's about the size of it. It's easy to switch back and forth, and you can easily do it with gloves on, your bare fingers, or even a foot if you have to. So overall, it gets a pass in my opinion. Okay, next up we have the latches. Now, if you remember my review from the Heart cordless wet dry vac, which is actually very similar to this particular wet dry vac, the latches on that particular dry vac were not very good and not very secure. That is not the case on this particular wet dry vac. The latches on this particular wet dry vac are perfectly satisfactory and do their job just fine. They're easy to open and they're easy to close, but they will not come accidentally opened or closed, well, because, well, they're just better designed. So quite frankly, I'm perfectly satisfied with this particular wet dry vac latches, and I don't really have anything else to say other than the fact they're made out of plastic. Let's move on. And next up we have the hose. Now the hose is a good quality hose. It's made out of a nice material that is sort of like a very flexible rubber with a collapsible aspect or a spring on the inside of it, so that will collapse back down for easy transportation and storage. And it's on a rotating turret, which means that you'll be able to, well, get it into the position that you need without having to worry about the hose, well, becoming worn out at a certain location on its port. So quite frankly, I'm not really upset about the quality or the design. I'm more upset about, well, the entrance point on the hose. The port, or the inlet port on the hose is, well, it's a 1 1/4 inch inlet, which means that it's not going to plug into the back of your miter saw without you wrapping some electrical tape around it in order for it to do that, and then it basically makes all your other accessories kind of useless. I'm really baffled by why they didn't decide to go with a universal connector or something that you could plug into the back of most miter saws without having to worry about, well, the diameter of the inlet. It's a little bit too small, and it's too loose for it to be useful without, well, modifying it like I said earlier. So quite frankly, that's an area of the hose that needs to be, well, fixed, but I digress. Now, the length of the hose is actually fairly good. It's about 6 feet long when it's fully extended, and of that 6 feet, you have about 5 feet of, well, usable length, because if you extend it too far, then you're just going to move the vacuum cleaner. You get the point. Now, I don't really have any issues with the length of the hose, so the main issue I have, though, is the diameter, but you really can't fix that because, well, it is an 18-volt vacuum cleaner, and if you make the diameter too big, you're going to lose suction power, and, well, that means that the vacuum cleaner is going to be a whole lot less useful. So just keep in mind that this is not a good vacuum cleaner for sucking up large debris such as large wood chunks or, well, shavings or even long pieces of grass. It will make the hose get clogged up, and, well, quite frankly, that means that it's going to be a pain to clear. So as far as I'm concerned, Ryobi did make most of the right decisions when it comes to this particular vacuum cleaner's hose, except when it comes to the inlet port size. So yeah, let's move on. And next up we have the carrying handle. The carrying handle is located at the top of the tool and is a folding style handle that is made out of plastic with a nice rubberized texture. It's quite easy to unfold. You simply, well, unfold it and then it will have a soft lock into place mechanism, and then when you need to fold it back into the storage position, you simply push on it and it will fold into the lower position. So overall, I'm quite satisfied with the handle, and I don't really have any complaints about it, and I think they actually did a really good job here. So let's go ahead and move on. And next up we have the blower port, or the exhaust port. Overall, it's an interesting design, but it's definitely flawed. In order to use the blower port, you have to basically take the floor attachment and plug it into the side of the port, and then plug the hose into the floor attachment, and then you'll be able to use the hose as a blower, but there's a lot of air escaping in between the vacuum cleaner and the floor tool, so I don't know, it's just not as effective as it could be, and I really don't know why they didn't design it with a full-size port to begin with. So quite frankly, I'm just not overly thrilled with this design. There's a lot of hassle in order to use it, and I don't think that the benefits of using it are all that great. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's definitely not as good as it could be. So quite frankly, the blower port on this particular tool definitely needs improvement. So yeah, let's move on. And next we have the filter. Now the filter on this particular vacuum cleaner isn't all that big, and it's not a HEPA filter, but it does get the job done. The one major downside of this particular filter would probably be the replacement cost. The replacement cost on this particular filter is a grand total of $13.47, which is a little bit on the high side as far as I'm concerned. So just be aware that if you are needing to replace the filter, it's definitely going to cost you a little bit more money than maybe some other brands. So let's go ahead and continue. Now underneath the filter we have the float mechanism, and the float mechanism is a fairly standard design. It's a ball within a plastic cage, and the ball is about the size of a golf ball, and as the liquid level in the tank rises, it will cause the ball to float, and eventually it will float up and then get sucked into the motor port, causing the vacuum cleaner to, well, not be able to suck anything up anymore. Overall, it's perfectly satisfactory, and I don't have any complaints, and it does its job just fine, so it gets a pass. And last but not least, we have the storage tank. Now the storage tank on this particular vacuum cleaner can hold around 3 gallons worth of dry material and about 2 1/3 gallons worth of liquid material. So quite frankly, it's a fairly average performance for a 3-gallon wet dry vac. The storage tank itself is made out of plastic, and it seems to be fairly durable and robust. I haven't had any issues, and there's been no punctures, and it's done a great job for transporting liquids because of the edge that is around the top of the storage tank. So quite frankly, I have zero complaints when it comes to the storage capacity of the tank and the design of the tank, so it gets a pass in my opinion. Okay, without a battery, the tool weighs a little over 8.5 pounds, and with a battery, it weighs a little over 10 pounds. So it's definitely a little bit more on the heavy, bulky side of things. Okay, now when it comes to suction power, it definitely does not have enough suction in order to suck up 2-inch bits, because there's just not enough mass for the suction to latch onto, and they won't really get drawn into the hose, and even if they do get drawn into the hose, they'll fall right back out again. Pretty much the same story with the nut drivers. As long as you don't tip the hose in the upward position, they will fall back out again as soon as you turn off the motor. It will be able to suck up small pieces of paper or paper towels as long as they're not too big and won't get jammed in the hose. So just your scraps and confetti, this will do just fine with. Okay, now when it comes to small fasteners, it will be able to suck up your small metal fastening screws and anything smaller. So it has a little bit of oomph there, so when you're dealing with a small mess, it will be able to help you there. Now when you start dealing with the slightly larger drywall size screws, it will be able to suck them into the hose, and 1 or 2 might end up in the tank, but generally they're going to stay in the hose, and when you turn off the vacuum cleaner, there's a good chance they'll fall back out again. Okay, now the area where this vacuum cleaner really shines is when it comes to your really small debris. Yeah, big shocker there. So overall, it does a good job of sucking up your small dirt, pebbles, and pretty much anything under the size of a marble that isn't metallic. So quite frankly, it does a good job with that sort of material. Where this vacuum cleaner really struggles, however, is on the larger debris that is lightweight, such as your larger wood chippings, your larger size paper debris, your large pieces of grass, anything that could possibly block that small diameter hose. And well, quite frankly, there really is no way around it for an 18-volt vacuum cleaner. I mean, I guess you can make the hose a little bit wider and that would help, but then you lose some of your suction power, meaning they wouldn't be as useful. But I don't know. There's a lot of trade-offs here. And quite frankly, I think Ryobi went with the right choice. I just wish that maybe there was a little bit more oomph to the motor that would help prevent some of these blockages. But at the end of the day, it's still a completely usable product. And when it comes to liquids, this particular vacuum cleaner is fairly quick and effective, and I have zero complaints when it comes to, well, sucking up water or other liquids. So, quite frankly, it's perfectly satisfactory. Just remember, you cannot use this vacuum cleaner to suck up flammable liquids. So, just need to say that. And the runtime on this particular vacuum cleaner using a 4 amp hour battery is anywhere in between around 14 to 18 minutes, depending on, well, how hard you're using it and how new or old your battery is. Of course, if your battery is really old, then it's going to be a lot worse of a performance. So just keep that in mind when you are buying this particular vacuum cleaner and you have old batteries. Oh, and one more thing to consider, when you pour the liquids out of the tank, you'll notice that there's a lot of spillage, but that's just because, well, if you don't want it to spill when you're carrying the tool, you're going to either have to have some sort of a port with a plug in it, or you're going to have a lip that is, well, a massive lip. And the lip on this particular canister will prevent you from spilling liquids when you're transporting the vacuum cleaner, but it definitely makes it a little bit more tricky when you're emptying the tank. And next up, pros and cons. Yeah, 18 volts the first pro, as usual. This means that you'll be able to use all your Ryobi 18 volt batteries, and you'll be able to adapt batteries over from other brands via third-party adapters at your own risk. Onboard tools. Yeah, I should have said accessories, but we'll fix that next time. Overall, having the accessories stored on board the tool means that you won't have to carry around an extra bag or box, and this is definitely a pro feature in my opinion. Good handle. Having a good handle is far more important than a lot of people seem to realize, and I really enjoy having the large oversized handle on this particular vacuum cleaner, so this is a pro in my opinion. Good hose. Overall, the quality of the hose is definitely a step above some other brands I've tried in the past, and overall, I would definitely consider it to be a pro. Durable. Overall, this has been a very durable little vacuum cleaner. It's survived several falls, and it's also definitely going to be a little bit more resistant to, well, being crushed. So in my opinion, this is a pro feature. Large switch. Overall, the large switch on this particular vacuum cleaner comes in handy for when, well, you need to turn it off or turn it on and you're not able to touch it with your hands because you're holding something. So overall, I definitely consider it to be a nice feature. Bulky. Overall, this is sort of a bulky tool. It's not as tall as it could be, which means it's going to be a little bit longer and a little bit wider than it needs to be. So it's definitely going to take up more space on a workbench or inside a vehicle. If they made it a little bit taller, I think that would have definitely helped with the overall space-saving aspects of it, and that's probably the route I would have went. But that's just my own opinion. Runtime. Overall, the runtime on this vacuum cleaner is perfectly acceptable to me, but some people might complain that it's on the short side. My answer to them is that, well, if you increase the runtime, you're going to have less suction, and I personally would rather have more suction than a longer runtime. And the first con is the blower port. The blower port is just fiddly, it takes too long to set up, and it just isn't a good option. They really could have put a full-size blower port somewhere on this particular tool, and the fact they didn't is definitely a con in my opinion. Hose diameter. The hose diameter on this particular vacuum cleaner is, well, it's acceptable for a lot of jobs, but if you're trying to suck up anything that's large and lightweight, there's a good chance it's going to get stuck in the hose. So at the end of the day, I think a slightly larger diameter hose would have been nice, but I can see why they didn't go that route. Crevice tool. Yeah, I really dislike the crevice tool. It's too short, it's not narrow enough, it just isn't a very good crevice tool, so in my opinion, it's a con. And lastly, we have the cuss word price. You can currently pick up this vacuum for the affordable price of $120, which is just ridiculous. This vacuum cleaner really should be priced closer to the $80 mark, and well, considering that its competition is definitely far more evenly priced, where you could pick up a Bauer for about $75, a Hercules that has dual power for about $90, and a Craftsman for about $100. This is definitely an overpriced vacuum cleaner. Just keep in mind, if you were to pick up any of those other vacuum cleaners, you'd have to buy battery adapters or buy whole new batteries and chargers. So yeah, this is definitely an overpriced vacuum, and that's a con in my opinion. And that is it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this vacuum cleaner. Overall, I think it's a good little vacuum cleaner, but it definitely has some negatives. The hose diameter is definitely smaller than I personally would like to see, but at the same time, it sort of has to be small because it's running off an 18-volt battery. It has fairly good suction, but it doesn't have enough suction to clear its hose from, well, larger, flakier objects that might get caught in it because of the rib design. So quite frankly, there's a lot going for it, there's a lot going against it, and I would definitely recommend it if it was lower in price. But considering it costs $120, I think there's other options on the market that are a little bit more, well, desirable, although you would have to buy new batteries and chargers in order to use them. So if you're looking for a durable Ryobi 18-volt vacuum cleaner, this is a good option, but just keep in mind that I'm pretty sure it's about to be discontinued and the successor is supposed to be more powerful, so I might just wait for that particular vacuum cleaner and pass on this particular vacuum cleaner for now. And that is it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. God bless.